MVP, most valuable player. Who's going to win most valuable player in this upcoming NBA season? And that's a great question. Give yourself a pat on the back for coming up with that question and asking it. But before we get into it, this is a YouTube video, so I'm legally obligated to ask you to like the video and subscribe to the channel and all that. It's not me. I don't have a choice in it. But without further ado, let's get into it. I want to start off with some honorable mentions. These are people who, I think are kind of in that superstar realm. They'll be in that loose discussion of who can win MVP, but I don't think they're actually going to win it. So no disrespect to these players. These are amazing top tier players, but let's just get into it. So to start off the honorable mentions, I'm going to go with Steph Curry. Obviously, two-time MVP Steph Curry, still a great player. I just don't think he's going to win MVP. It's simple as that. LeBron James, and it's really only because I don't know. I just can't disrespect LeBron James and not give him at least an honorable mention when we're talking about MVP. But obviously, I think the Lakers, so many question marks around the Lakers. Are they even going to be a playoff team? Are they going to be a play-in team? Like, come on. LeBron's not going to win MVP. I think if the Lakers are like the number 2 seed, then maybe, sure, whatever. Actually, no. If the Lakers are the number 2 seed, that probably means Anthony Davis is playing really well. And then Anthony Davis would probably be more likely to get it. But I personally don't see a world where that happens. Honorable mentions: Steph Curry, LeBron James, Karl Anthony Towns, just because I think the Timberwolves could be poised to make a big jump. And, Karl Anthony Towns is the head of that. I think, Rudy Gobert might be like one of those guys where it's like, oh, but we turned their defense around, and, he might be like a 5th place vote getter like Joakim Noah that one year or something, but he's definitely not going to win. Ja Morant, give Ja Morant an honorable mention. Superstar player, just there's guys ahead of him that I think, he can't really surpass. And then last honorable mention I think I'm going to give out is Kevin Durant. I think a lot of people might be mad at that because they'd have Kevin Durant in like their actual conversation for MVP. I just think there's too many question marks around Kevin Durant and the Nets right now. He's been unhealthy for the last few years. Who knows what's going on with the team? Just way too many question marks for me to really say Kevin Durant is the guy I'm picking for MVP. But with that said, let's get into guys, the guys who I really want to talk about who could win MVP. And we'll start off with the big man who just won MVP, Nikola Jokic. I don't think he's going to win it. Not because he's not good enough, but because he just won 2 in a row. And voter fatigue is a real thing. Nikola Jokic would have to be so good. Nikola Jokic would not only have to be the best player in the league, he'd have to be the best player in the league by far. The Nuggets would have to be the number 1 seed. Both Jokic and the Nuggets would have to be so good for him to win his 3rd in a row. I just don't think it's plausible. It could happen, obviously. Anything could happen, but I don't think it's going to happen. Giannis, kind of the same thing. Even though he's 2 years removed from his back-to-back MVPs, I still think there's a little bit of voter fatigue there. Although I do think the narrative has been shifting back to like, oh yeah, Giannis is the best player in the world, so they might be more open to giving it to him. And I think he could, And I think it's more likely than Jokic, because like if the Bucks come out and they're the number 1 seed in the East and Giannis is dominant as ever, then heck, Giannis could be the MVP right there. That easy. I just don't think the Bucks will be the number 1 seed. I think they'll be a top 3 seed. And then, they'll dominate in the playoffs. They might even make the finals. But I just don't think they're going to be the regular season number 1 seed. I think that's going to be like, the Celtics or something. And then Joel Embiid. I think narratively, Joel Embiid is really set up to have a really good shot at winning MVP. Last year it was kind of like, oh, Embiid or Jokic, and then Jokic won. The reason I'm not picking Embiid for this year is because I think Embiid will obviously be really good. He's a great player. But, he might have like 2 minor injuries, end up missing like 15 games. But obviously he could win. Embiid could win. But we'll talk more about that in a bit, right after I talk about Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic is unbelievable on the basketball court. If you've watched Luka Doncic play, you know what I'm talking about. step back threes, the floaters, the post game. He's probably the Mavericks' best post player, and he's their point guard. No, he's undoubtedly the Mavericks' best post player. I don't even know why I said probably. But like, I don't know. Luka's just so good. And if the Mavericks were like top 3 seed, maybe Luka's gonna win. Maybe Luka could win. I could definitely see that. But do I think the Mavericks will be a top 3 seed in the West? I don't know. Let's think. Who's in the West who do I have ahead of the Mavericks in the West? I mean, there's the Suns, yeah, the Warriors, yeah. Honestly, Luka, okay, if it wasn't for this next guy who I'm probably very stupidly picking as MVP for my MVP award, I'm not saying he's going to win. But the person I'm going to pick is kind of out of left field. And a lot of people are probably going to be like, oh, that's dumb. And I kind of agree. I just, I want to be bold with it. I don't want to pick a boring stock answer like, oh, Luka or Embiid. So Luka would be my pick if it wasn't for this next person. And this next person I want to talk about is James Harden. And over the years, I haven't necessarily been the biggest James Harden fan. I was when he was in the Thunder, and it was cool to see him on the Rockets, but then I started watching him play more, and I hated the drawing foul stuff, and then I didn't like James Harden. But a lot of people are like, oh, James Harden's kind of washed now, but I think he's still got it in him. And here's my reasoning for why I think James Harden could win MVP. Obviously, I think it's kind of unlikely that he'll win, but this is who I'm picking as my pick because I don't know. I just think it's possible, and it's fun. It's fun to think of these scenarios rather than just the boring stock answers. So Harden's on the 76ers, right, with Embiid. Embiid is an MVP candidate. But I think, like I said earlier, Embiid might miss 15 to 20 games, maybe even more. But if the 76ers are really good and Harden plays like a full healthy year, like we've seen him do a lot, even though, he's had a couple injuries in the past couple years. But before that, he had a long history of health. If we can get a healthy Harden, and Harden's on his shit this year, and the 76ers are balling, and Embiid misses like a little bit of time, I could definitely see a world where people are like, wow, Harden is leading this team with Embiid, but Harden is there every day. When Embiid's out, Harden's there leading the team. When Embiid's there, Harden's his co-star. I could easily see a world where that happens. Will it happen? I don't know. It's a kind of a shot in the dark. I don't think a lot of people have Harden on their MVP watch list, but I think it's something very interesting to think about, and I think it could happen. So I'm locking it in with James Harden as my pick, even though I want Luka to win. Full transparency, I'm a Mavericks fan. I want Luka to win, and he would be my pick if I didn't have this idea about James Harden possibly winning, which maybe isn't the best idea, but that's just what I'm going with. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you disagree or agree with the James Harden thing, let me know in the comments. Let me know who you think is going to win MVP. But yeah, I guess that's it. I'll see you guys later. Peace.